Over the years that I've spent playing this game, which is pretty well my entire life, I have always tried to make the Arcana Force deck work, and I had a big difficult time doing it. So when I saw this video by TheDuelLogs, Arcana Force fail cards, archetypes, and sometimes mechanics in Yu-Gi-Oh! As a new viewer to this particular channel, I thought this video would be very fun to react to today. Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with too many YouTube channels. Let's watch this together, guys. Please show the original creators some support in the pinned comments down below.
Many players will do what it takes to win a match of Yu-Gi-Oh! Add extra engines in the decks, even if they brick, use cards that need dice rolls to activate something, or even play Runic Stun and act like they're lovable people. What we won't risk is doing a coin flip.
You know, that's actually true. That's kind of true. But I've always liked the idea of it, and I've liked some of them. Like, the problem is there's only so many good Arcana Force cards that you can use, and I've tried to intertwine it with, like, counter fairies and everything. I've never been able to make it work, man.
Let alone a deck that is filled with coin flipped effects. Such is the story of the infamously known GX deck, Arcana Force.
Love it. Love it. And I gotta say, with the TheDuelLogs, man, I love the way their videos are structured, the background, everything. I think it's very pretty to watch.
The entire deck was based around light fairy monsters with coin flip effects that vary depending on your result. Some of them were neat, and some of them, well, weren't. What this deck was perfect for was creating chaos like Sartorius, or people with severe gambling problems. But it wasn't
all you need to do like Sartorius, you need to just be able to look into Destiny until you run into somebody who can change that.
Before was any kind of competitive play, as we'll show you in today's video. The Arcana Force would make their flippy arrival Light of Destruction on May 13th, 2008.
Dude, it's so nostalgic looking at that pack, man. I remember the day that I saw that. It's so nostalgic.
A majority of the archetype was in the set, with 13 cards appearing. 10 monsters, 1 spell, and 2 trap cards would be the reward. Starting, we have Arcana Force 0, the Fool. This level 1 fairy with 0 attack and defense couldn't be destroyed by battle, and couldn't be switched to defense position.
I always thought it was an okay card. Every once in a while you would see, like, I'm talking like way back in the day when this thing first came out, every once in a while you would see someone run an Arcana Force 0, but still, like, it's still a bad card. Like, if you want a card that doesn't get destroyed by battle, like something like Spirit Reaper or even Marshmelon is better than this.
When summoned, you toss a coin and apply the proper effect based on the result. If heads, negate the effects of cards you control that target this monster and destroy them. If it's tails, negate the effects of cards your opponent controls that target this monster and destroy it. This is how every Arcana Force monster operates. They have a trigger summon effect to flip a coin on all of them, and you never know what you're going to get.
And even for me personally, I tried incorporating like the cards where you can redo the coin flips and stuff, but it's just way too much, too slow, and it never worked out. So I always ran the Arcana Force. Like, I tried running a couple Arcana Force cards with the Frog deck. The Frog deck has been my primary deck throughout like my history playing this game. I always use the 3 tribute Arcana Force monsters and kind of intertwined them in there to have a little bit of fun because both those effects could be positive.
The Fool clearly shows. A monster that couldn't be destroyed by battle but needed to be left in attack position so you could feel it punched in the face doesn't scream as a card you should run. The choices from the coin flip weren't really anything significant either. You had a 50% chance of making this card non-targetable by your opponent if you got tails. Seeing this card already suggests that this deck is not that easy to play. Nothing is more stressful than cards than having to hope for a good result.
Yeah.
Now let's do this 9 more times with the rest of the Arcana Force family.
And like, this is one of the better Arcana Force cards. And this is making me kind of second guess myself by saying Arcana. I think I've always said Arcana, so apologies if that's a little bit of frustrating to watch, but I think it is Arcana.
Because they only get worse from here, because at least the Fool could be set face down and be a battle immune monster, which was still a good effect in 2008.
Yes.
Thank goodness
exactly.
It worked. Quick, we don't have time. I'm a blue version of you from the future, and I need your help.
Oh,
okay, is this a sponsorship, I'm guessing?
Do you like food?
We don't have time.
Okay, yeah, we're going to skip the sponsorship there. But guys, again, please go support them in the pinned comment description down below.
Arcana Force 1, the Magician, was level 4 with 1100 attack and defense. And when summoned, you toss a coin. If heads, its attack is doubled until the end of the turn when your opponent activates a spell card. If tails, your opponent gains 500 life points if they activate a spell card.
So at least like this isn't too bad. It's not like your opponent gains control of this card, but still, when a spell card's activated, this card becomes a double to your original attack until the end of the turn. It's not worth it for an 1100 monster. Like, if this was maybe 1500 attack points, this would be significantly better.
Arcana Force 3, the Empress, was another level 4 with 1300 attack and defense. When you flip a coin on its summon, you can special summon an Arcana Force monster from your hand if your opponent normal summons such a monster if it's heads. If it's tails, send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard.
Dude, like, what the hell? Who thought of this card? I gotta say, the card art is very pretty for this, but like, this card is beyond horrible. You can't run this card.
If your opponent normal summons a monster. Arcana Force 4, the Emperor, was level 4 with 1400 attack and defense. All Arcana Force monsters gain 500 attack when its coin result is heads. If tails, they lose 500 attack instead.
Now, at least that one's like a nice gamble, right? That one you can deal with because the heads effect is very, very strong.
Arcana Force 6, the Lovers, was another level 4 with 1600 attack and defense. If heads, you can use it as 2 tributes for an Arcana Force monster. If tails, neither player can tribute summon Arcana Force monster.
Now, that one's not too bad because, I particularly when running this deck never really, it was difficult. If you didn't have to tribute summon, it's not a big deal. But, it was an okay effect back in the day when this came out, like a card being able to be 2 tributes or something. It was just okay.
Arcana Force 7, the Chariot, was 1700 attack and defense. If heads, you can special summon a monster destroys by battle to your side of the field. If tails, you give control of this card to your opponent.
Now, this one I loved using, and I still sprinkle it in a couple decks just for fun, man, because I like this effect where you can just special summon a monster and you can, equip something like United We Stand with it. Love this card, but the problem is the tails effect is so horrible. Drawing this thing on a first turn, but again, at least this is a proper gamble.
You have Arcana Force 14 Temperance and Arcana Force 18 the Moon for their high-level monsters. Temperance had a quick effect that allowed you to discard a card to prevent you from taking battle damage from a battle you just had. On summon, toss a coin, and if heads, you have all battle damage you take. If tails, have all battle damage your opponent takes.
Again, it's a gamble that's just not worth it. The card is not strong.
The Moon is level 7, and when summoned, toss a coin. If heads, you can special summon a Moon token once per turn during your standby phase. If tails, target one monster you control and give it to your opponent during the end phase.
Here's the other thing, man. At least, with the heads effect, okay, that's pretty cool, right? That's pretty useful, and it's a nice big boss monster. But the tails effect is so beyond bad and horrible for you that you cannot run this card, just like the Empress.
To continue the high-level monsters, Arcana Force 21, the World, was
That's
a
my
monster
boy.
with 3100 attack and defense. If summoned, toss a coin, and if heads, you can send 2 monsters you control to the graveyard to skip your opponent's turn during the end phase once per turn. If tails, however, you add the top card of your opponent's graveyard to their hand once per turn.
Now, this is a much better card, and this card I've always sprinkled into my frog decks because the idea, oh, dude, and it worked out every once in a while, and I gotta say the artwork for that card is beautiful, by the way. Dude, I love the idea of Treeborn Frog, Ronin Tonin, see you later, skip the next turn, rinse and repeat. Oh, when you get that going, it was a feel-good moment, man.
Finally, for boss monsters, they had Arcana Force EX, the Dark Ruler, and Arcana Force EX, the Light Ruler. Both couldn't be normal summoner set and must be special summoned from your hand by sending 3 monsters to the graveyard.
Now, another one that I've never personally used was, I've used it before, but it's not, I've always liked using the Light Ruler personally within my frog decks, but these are nice, good, proper boss monsters. That's something that I did like about the Arcana Force, and again, I love the artwork behind those cards, man.
Toss a coin and apply the following effect. For Dark Ruler, if heads, it can attack once again in a row during the battle phase. And if it does so by this effect, it's changed its defense position, and it cannot change its battle position until the end of the next turn. If tails, destroy all monsters on the field if it's destroyed.
Now, I like this. It was a proper boss monster, had a bunch of attack, it was difficult to get out, and no matter what the coin toss was, it was okay. It just changed how you use the card, and that's what I liked about the Arcana Force, and I wish that's kind of the route that they went with it. I get the gambling idea. I understand that, but, the problem was, for the effects that worked against you, they were just so bad that you can't use them a lot of times.
For Light Ruler, if it's heads, target one card in your graveyard and add it to your hand when this card destroys your opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard. If tails, you can negate the activation of a spell or trap card or monster effect that targets this card and destroy it by having this card lose 1000 attack.
Again, another card that worked out very well, and I thought that both those monsters did fit in my frog decks very well, but it sucks that we can't, fit it in a proper Arcana Force deck.
Force monsters, it's nice to know the boss monsters' effects aren't abysmal if you're getting either heads or tails.
Yeah.
At best, the Dark Ruler can give you a sweeper in battle or a nuke, and the Light Ruler can negate things that targeted or recycle cards from your graveyard. However, they didn't have protection from non-targeting destruction removal like how the boss monsters of today have it literally built in.
Yeah, but that's what I liked about that. These cards weren't invincible. Now, this is something that made me kind of fall out of love with the game, and that's why I'm playing things like Edison format, hat format.
That made it more deterring to run these monsters, as you essentially go -3 to special summon a big boss with nothing and with no protection.
Yeah, but that was kind of normal back in the day. When these cards came out, the boss monsters didn't have all of that built-in protection.
The rulers were basically too costly to summon and too risky to play.
That's why, again, I mixed them in with my frog deck because it was easy to get a three tribute.
At the very least, they didn't require normal summon to be brought out, though. Nonetheless, to say a lot is going with the Arcana monsters is an understatement. Effects can range from a minor attack increase from Emperor to continuous effects that special summon monsters like Empress. The same is true for the negative effects they carry. You can suddenly find yourself unable to tribute summon your Arcana Force monsters, giving your opponent their cards back from their grave, or straight up handing them your monsters.
Yep, and it's ridiculous, man. Like, I'm all for the gambling idea and for having a little bit of drawbacks and effects, but the drawbacks are horrible.
This brings us to our first problem, if you couldn't tell. The deck depended on coin toss effects, which made them too random and too inconsistent to count on. Requiring every monster needing a coin flip to succeed in your favor is reliable as thinking everyone showers at regionals.
Whoa! Boom! Take that, Yu-Gi-Oh community. Dude, it's funny, like, you have such a nice structured video and you just have that synced in there.
You have no control over the results that happen, and you're at the whim of destiny. Unless you're Sartorius himself and have the power to do so.
But that's what I was saying. Like, I understand the archetype behind this, and there's a lot of people who grew up with the anime show like myself, and I liked the idea of Sartorius' deck, and you could play his deck, and you are leaving it up to destiny, and you are not Sartorius. So I get the idea behind this.
The monsters come...
Sorry, I didn't pause it again, but it worked for me as somebody who enjoyed the show as a kid, and I loved playing the Arcana Force deck.
Take the game out of your hands outside of playing them, and rely on luck that you would get an effect that wouldn't screw your game over. The other issue that came into play is that this made it hard to set up a game style. You had no control of your board setup except by choosing a monster to summon. Since you can't decide which effect to use, you don't have any control over combos or responses to your opponent's plays with your Arcana Force monsters due to their inconsistency.
Yeah, it would have been nice if we had like maybe half the Arcana Force monsters being able to just like have a regular effect and it doesn't all have to be heads or tails.
Lastly, the deck was slow. On top of the random effects, no search cards were given to the archetype on release, and you had to rely on drawing power outside of the archetype, like Reckless Greed, to dig through your deck.
Even that, like, I just intertwined some of these cards with another archetype. Like, I sprinkled a couple of them in a counter fairy deck. Again, I used the boss monsters and frog decks, but that's about it.
The deck barely had any means of special summoning as well. Empress can potentially give you unlimited special summons, but that's if you got the coin flip correct. There were also cards like Valhalla, Hall of the Fallen that let you special summon a level 4 fairy from your hand, but you needed to control no monsters to use it.
Yeah, but at the time when the Arcana Force came out, this card was pretty strong, and all of a sudden it could be helpful bringing out some of your big baddies for Arcana Force.
Was searchable with Hecatrice, however, that wasn't enough to make bringing out your rulers easy.
Yeah.
As they needed 3 monsters to send to the graveyard to summon.
But at the time, again, like, these were proper boss monsters. Like, obviously, this card wouldn't be worth it to play in, like, any sort of modern format. But at the time when these came out, it made sense for a card like this to require 3 tributes.
The deck was stuck constantly with normal summoning monsters while trying to avoid countless traps that could quickly stagnate your plays. That's not going to cut it in a deck that needs, well, anything to get going. What the archetype needed was a card that could increase its consistency. That request was met with half-hearted results. Light Barrier was their field spell that lets you choose what coin flip effect you want to apply to your Arcana Force monsters when they're summoned.
You know, to be honest with you, it's been so long since I've played the Arcana Force. And again, if you happen to be new to the channel over here, I have stopped playing the game somewhere around the Pendulum era, and I recently found my love for the game again once I figured out that there were other formats to play, like Edison was popular, hat format in particular. So some of my memory with these cards are a little bit rusty, and I forgot about Light Barrier. I completely forgot that got introduced.
And it gives you life points when Arcana Force monster destroys a monster by battle, equal to that monster's attack power. If this sounds too good to be true, you are an experienced Yu-Gi-Oh player. The card came with the demand of having you flip a coin to get this effect during your standby phase.
I know, I remember that. I remember that being so frustrating, man.
Tails, the applied effect is negated until the end of your next standby phase. Nothing makes a card necessary to a bad deck terrible like using the same gimmick to it. On top of the fact that you keep flipping a coin to get this condition, hopefully you'd wait until the standby phase to take a chance.
And again, you could use like the second coin toss card, but that requires you... Sorry for the jump cut. I looked down over there. I'm recording this video at night when my baby's asleep, and she literally just woke up, stood up, and then she's going back to bed. So hopefully I can finish the recording over here. So I lost my train of thought. My apologies for that.
No escaping the destiny of flipping a quarter at the table to even get the effect that could make Arcana Force stomachable. Arcana Call is the first trap card that selects an Arcana Force monster you control and removes 1 Arcana Force monster from either player's graveyard. Until the end phase of your turn, that monster's effects becomes the same as the removed monster's effect for the same coin toss.
Like, it's not worth it to use. It requires too much setup, it's too specific, and you need something like good to target it, you know?
The second trap is Reversal of Fate. If the name didn't give it away, this card lets you target 1 Arcana Force monster and treat its effect as the opposite coin toss.
The problem is you have all of these cards that are focused on like making your monsters stop being bad as opposed to just playing a deck where your monsters are good.
Arcana Call needs way too much to be utilized. Not only did you need an Arcana Force monster in your graveyard, but you also needed one with an effect that benefited you based on the monster's coin flip. Reversal Fade was about as decent as it gets, as it at least lets you change your result to something you desired.
But even then, you had to like have this set and make sure you're using it at the proper time. It's just not worth it, man.
The only good thing you can say about these cards is that you didn't have to flip a coin to get their effects.
That's
However,
true.
that's not enough to get through the fact that this archetype was too gimmicky to see good results. A deck with too many various effects, no searchers, and no way to control gameplay is destined for disaster.
Yeah, you're fighting against both your opponent and the cards that you are using. You're fighting against your own cards.
So, as expected, no one picked up this deck on release. The inconsistencies were too much of a turnoff for anyone to play except for a fun time.
And yeah, that was me. I've always tried to make this deck I always tried to make it work. I always tried to have fun playing it, man, but I could never in a million years make it work.
It was too strong for this deck to have any chance with contenders like Lightsworns, who hilariously also came from the same set, and Gladbeasts. All these decks had better game plans than the Arcana Force combinations of Light Barrier plus Arcana Force Monster and Rage and a Coin Toss, giving you the desired result. But if it makes the Arcana Force users happy, one card saw a tad bit of play.
Wait, I can't even think about which one was it that saw play. Didn't we just go through them all? Oh, it must have been the Fool, right? Because at least it had his can't be destroyed by battle effect.
Surprisingly, the Fool was used in a few top deck lists, as it was simply a card that couldn't be destroyed by battle and could stall while you got your pieces.
I don't recall why people chose this, though. Maybe it's because it was light fairy level 1. I don't recall why people used to choose this over Spirit Reaper specifically and a card like Marshmallow. And I don't even think that Marshmallow's a good card, but at least it has something more to it, you know?
Decks like Counter Fairy also utilized it and melded it with their other fairy support.
That's me.
Such as Herald of Orange Light, discarding the target, and an honest target because it was a light monster.
I guess so. I guess that makes sense. But again, even if you just want a monster that can't be destroyed by battle, I would still like throw a Spirit Reaper in there.
So no pitying the Fool. You could pity the rest of the deck, as it hadn't seen play for over 16 years.
Dude, I was probably the only one in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! To somewhat regularly use Arcana Force EX, the Light Ruler.
It didn't get support for over 12 years until a random card was given to it in Phantom Rage in 2020. What? Arcana Reading was a normal spell card.
They got support? What? Hang on. Toss a coin and apply this effect. If a light barrier is in your field zone, you can choose the effect instead. About time. Heads, add one card from your deck to your hand that has a coin tossing effect except Arcana Reading. Tails, your opponent adds one card from their deck to their hand. You can banish this card from your graveyard immediately after this effect resolves. Normal summon one Arcana Force monster. Interesting. Still not the best card, but that's cool, and I like the Sartorius table with it too. I didn't know that they got support, man.
Card that you need to toss a coin to apply an effect unless you controlled Light Barrier. In that case, you get to choose the effect without flipping a coin.
About time.
It lets you add a card with a coin toss and effect from your deck to your hand. If Tails, your opponent gets to add a card from their deck to their hand. It also had an effect that allowed you to banish this card from your graveyard to immediately normal summon an Arcana Force monster from your hand. Even with their Searcher, the deck got worse because of it. Not only was its search effect way too risky, but it now made Light Barrier, which was just as gimmicky, necessary to play.
I guess that's a good point, but at least it's something, right? At least it's something that you could use a little bit. But yeah, it's another card that you have to play with because you already have something working against you too.
By the fact that Reading lets you normal summon additional monsters to set up your summoning for your boss monsters, that setup will still be too slow. It will take your next turn to at least summon an 8 or higher. By then, your opponent could just clear your board easily since Archetypes had no protection or spell trap support that interacts with your opponent's plays. Not as if you had to just worry about your opponent screwing up your plans when this deck can maim itself without any help.
Yeah, you can literally just play. You can set your monsters, have a few negations for attacks and stuff like that, and let the opponent destroy themselves with Arcana Force.
To finally end the pain of our Coinstar loving archetype, Arcana Force 15, the Fiend, was a level 7 fairy with 2500 attack and defense.
I did not know that Arcana Force got support. You can discard this card to add one Light Barrier from your deck to your hand. Wow, there, we got a Searcher. Okay, that's cool. If this card summon, toss a coin. Heads, when an attack is declared involving this card, you can target one monster in the field, destroy it. If you do, inflict 500 damage to its controller. Tails, if an attack is declared involving this card, destroy all monsters on the field. Dude, that's something. That's a little bit better. And look how creepy the artwork is, man.
This card could be discarded and add a Light Barrier from your deck or graveyard to hand. And of course, it has your mandatory on-summon coin flip effects. If heads, you can target one monster in the field, destroy it, and inflict 500 damage to the controller when this card declares an attack. If tails, destroy all monsters in the field if an attack is declared involving this card.
That's not bad. That's not bad. That's probably one of the better Arcana Force cards. And dude, again, look how creepy the artwork is, man.
Not many Arcana Force monsters have effects that seem beneficial, whether it's the heads or tails effects. The Fiend is one of those cards you can include with EX Light Ruler and EX Dark Ruler as cards that give decent effects for either result. It even fetches Light Barrier from your hand or graveyard.
Yeah, and that's something that you needed with this deck. Like, you'd have to rely on, I mean, at least you could put in Terraforming, but still, at least you have an Arcana Force card that does that, a little bit of searching power.
Giving you easy access to the card. Unfortunately, the card is hindered by being a level 7 without an inheritable special summoning effect, making this card hard to summon in a deck with very few ways to get extra bodies on board. The deck can barely manage to get cards like Dark Ruler and Light Ruler that need 3 monsters to send to the grave. So
yeah, how often, realistically, playing the Arcana Force deck, and if you've never even played it, how often do you think that these cards actually saw play on the field if you're running a pure Arcana Force deck? It did not happen.
it's safe to assume they would struggle to get a simple tribute summon set up for this card. In conclusion, the best way this card can be used is to search for a Light Barrier and eat an Ash for its trouble. That's the note this deck ended on, and it seems like the final coin flip for this deck. Many would say that all the deck needs is more support to make it playable, but that doesn't seem likely.
But here's the thing, too. Then this is the problem with modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is let's say one day Konami decides to give this support. They're going to give it the most busted cards of all time that you'll never even want to play any of the old cards besides, like, maybe Light Barrier. And then they're going to have ridiculous effects with all the self-protection in the world, and it's not going to be fair to play.
Konami seems hell-bent on ensuring that this Archetypes have players bet on a coin flip. Sadly, that's already the impending doom the deck will have to live with. The gimmicky process hinders consistency and does more harm than good. Yu-Gi-Oh! Player decks usually give players a style that'll set up their board manually, or even have a clear-cut direction that players can just run on autopilot without having to do much. Arcana Force offers neither. You're at the whims of probability, a coin, and chaos.
Like, and that doesn't make for a good deck, like, let alone nowadays. It was horrible back in the day, and I tried so hard, guys. I tried so hard to make this deck work. You can't.
Have no direction of how things will go, and it feels like a deck that removes the player completely. Let's add to the fact that this deck is really easy to interrupt and stop, whether it be hand traps, monster effects, spells, or traps.
Yeah, that's a good point. But again, I think the whole point of it, just like he was mentioning earlier with Konami, like wanting this to be a coin flip deck, it's about the people like myself back in the day who wanted to get into this because Yu-Gi-Oh! GX was one of my favorite shows, and I wanted to play the Arcana Force, the big baddie of the entire season. So I understand why they want to keep it like that, because I'm sure that there still are kids growing up today. Well, not nearly as many as back in the day, but there are kids that are going to want to play with their favorite anime show deck.
A sneeze from your opponent can also interrupt your destiny and outcome. It's fair to say that this deck should be forgotten in time. It's just not worth the effort of building and flipping a coin 64 times and raging that it only gives the result you want 2 times. So, would any support really help this deck? Probably not.
I disagree, actually. There's always support that you can build into it. I don't know what off the top of my head, and maybe we can get into that type of video one day, but it's right now, it's not looking fun.
Not only would the deck still need to have an insane amount of support to make it better, but it'll also just need to be able to combat even the simplest of decks, whether rogue, meta, or even just plain casual. There doesn't really seem to be a way to make a coin flip card that sticks to the gimmick like the Arcana Force does, and not punish the player, and overall be an actual sound card. The closest they've seemed to get to that is by most likely using Light Barrier as a catalyst for new support, like how Arcana Reading does. But
even then, the Light Barrier card isn't that great in general. Like, it's, hey, I'm playing this card, so now at least I have a 50% chance of my monsters not working against myself.
Allows the player to choose the effect if they control Light Barrier. You just have the unfortunate situation of Light Barrier being the string holding the deck together. Isn't that better than the latter, with the constantly flipping of coins, crossing your fingers, and sweating profusely as the effect ends up making you discard cards from your hand, give your opponent life points, make you go back 3 spaces, or whatever Arcana Force forces you to do? At the end of the day, we can all agree that the deck is bad and just recognize that Sartorius is one of the most creepy drawn human beings in all of GX.
And to be honest with you, while I really enjoyed Season 2 back in the day, I did not like Sartorius as a villain, and we uploaded this on, we have a movie channel. I am your guy with too many YouTube channels, by the way, so go check out the other channels that we have. My sister and I recently revisited Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. We've been going through our childhood shows. Right now, we started watching Spider Riders from back in the day, and I didn't like Sartorius. I remember liking him a lot more when I was a kid, and I just didn't find myself too invested.
Just play Yubel and enjoy your time. It's time to let Arcana Force rest forever in the GX era and flip its way into oblivion.
Never, man, never. I will always have it in my frog monster deck. I love using those boss monsters. If you guys want to continue watching the DuelLogs type content, first of all, you can show them some support in the pinned comment description down below. But we also reacted to a video they made about the worst counter traps of all time. You can check it out right here. I would love to have you over there. Thank you very much for watching the video, guys. Take care, everybody.